From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I want to talk to you today a little bit about inputs and outputs, or some of you guys have heard me call it lead measures and lag measures. And I'm going to use the analogy. I'm going to use a few analogies away from dentistry, right? So as many of you guys know, my wife and I are doing 75 hard and we're coming down the home stretch. We really have like 2 weeks left. And this morning I weighed 186 pounds. When I started 75 hard on January 13th, I believe it was, I weighed 198 pounds. So I've lost 12 pounds in about 10 weeks. But what I really want to unpack for you guys is when I get on the scale every day, and it has not been a linear progression of me losing weight. I didn't go from 198 to 197 to like all the way down, right? I would lose a couple pounds and then I would gain a pound. And then I would lose 3 pounds and gain 4. And every day there was a lot of fluctuation based on a number of things. How much water you drank, how much stress you're going through, how much sleep that you got. Did you eat a lot of carbohydrates the day before? How much salt did you eat? Did you have ham and bacon and blah, 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 right? So the scale is a lag measure. Sometimes the scale shows us what we want to see, and sometimes it doesn't. And the reason I really want to unpack this with you guys is because when I was much less mature, and that's not to suggest that I'm mature now, but when I was much less mature on how this all works, if I was losing a little bit of weight every day, I would continue on the same path. I would go with the same strategy. But if there was a day or two in a row where all of a sudden I was gaining weight, even though I was doing all the same things, I would quickly pivot and change the strategy. Okay, well, I'm going to fast today, or I'm going to go zero carb today, or I'm going to do ... in an effort to get the output, the weight on the scale number to be what I needed it to be. And what I found was when I saw a number that was frustrating on the scale and I quickly pivoted, I would start to unravel my whole process and my whole strategy, and I would end up lost. So what I've done this time, kind of learning from all of that brain damage and scar tissue, is I just decided my inputs are what I can control. I can only control the inputs. I cannot control the outputs. I cannot control the number on the scale. So what are my inputs? I am going to track every single thing that passes my lips, everything I drink, everything I eat, and I will make sure that I'm dialed into a certain calorie amount. In my particular situation, the calorie goal was 2,200 calories per day. So I knew exactly how much protein I wanted, I knew how much fat I wanted, and I knew how much carbohydrate I wanted. And if you want to take a deep dive on that, we have a podcast from a few months ago where I talked a little bit about that. So I was going to be in absolute control of that input. The other thing I was going to be in absolute control of is my exercise. I knew I was going to exercise at some level every day, because that's what you do with 75 hard. And finally, the final input that I was going to control was the amount of steps that I was going to take. I was going to walk at least 15,000 steps per day. Now, again, this 2,200 calorie number, 15,000 steps, like that's not for you. That's for me. Based on my history of manipulating my body for events and stuff like that, I knew that those numbers were what I needed to stay in line with to get to the goal weight that I wanted to get to. So every single day for the last roughly 65 or 70 days now, That's what I've done. I've eaten 2,200 calories. I've worked out every day, and I've gotten a minimum of 15,000 steps. And wouldn't you know it, the scale would go down, it would go up. It would go down a little bit more, it would go up. It would go down a little bit more, it would go up. But in looking back over the last 10 weeks, 9 weeks or so, I've lost 12 pounds. So it's one of those, and again, I know this is a podcast, so you can't see this. So I'm doing this with my hand, but it's like you go up a little bit, you go down a little bit, you go up a little bit, you go down a little bit. But the net result of that is me losing 12 pounds. So the output, I ultimately did have control over long term. I just didn't have control over the output, the number on the scale every single day. But what I had absolute control over was the inputs. So I knew, just based on, again, my own brain damage and previous experiences, I knew that if I fully controlled the inputs, that the outputs would take care of themselves. So with that backdrop, with that context, I want you to think about some of the outputs that you want in your dental office and how some of those outputs you don't have total control over, but you do have total control over the inputs. So you've heard me use this analogy before. I'll use it here because I think it's a great one. If you want to start more Invisalign cases, I want to start 10 Invisalign cases a month, right? That's really out of your control. You can't force 10 people to say yes. But what you can do is educate yourself on why Invisalign benefits people, educate your team on why Invisalign benefits the patients, and then present X amount of cases on a weekly or monthly basis. That's in your control. No one can take that away from you. So if you want to do 5 or 10 cases a month output, what you absolutely have to control is what you can control, Stoic philosophy, the number of cases you present. So on a weekly scorecard, what I would be tracking, if that output goal of Invisalign cases started is important to you, I would be tracking the amount of Invisalign cases that you're presenting. And that is 100% in your control. It's 100% in your team's control. And that's the best way to get the output that you want. Just like the output I wanted was to lose 12 pounds. So I controlled the inputs. The output I want is to start 5 Invisalign cases a month. So I'm going to control the input. I am going to present 5 cases per week. That's a very simple example of this philosophy, but the philosophy is true in almost every facet of your dental practice. Let's say that you're trying to keep a team member more accountable to do what you need them to do. I'm not going to unpack all of the things that are involved with that. And I've done it on other podcasts. We're doing it on our servant leadership course. But without question, you need to be crystal clear on what's expected of this person. Assuming that you're crystal clear on what's expected of this person, the output or the goal that you're trying to achieve is this particular person does what you expect them to do. Can you control that? Not 100%. But you can control the inputs. And by inputs, I mean, are you crystal clear with what you expect them to do? That's 100% in your control. Have they been trained up beyond reproach on how to do what you expect them to do? That's 100% in your control. Have you gone into the storm, had minute meetings, and gone to this person when they are not meeting the expectation that you have for them? 100% in your control. So if you do those things, if you control those inputs, if you're crystal clear with what's expected, if you train them up on what they need to do, if you have conversations with them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis when they are not meeting that expectation. And the other flip side of that, if you're having daily, weekly, and monthly meetings, if they are meeting the expectation and showering them with kindness and appreciation, again, conversation for another day, then I can almost guarantee you that they're either going to do what you wanted them to do, i.e., output, or you have absolute clarity that you need to make a change. So, in all walks of life, the output is directly related to the input. Let's look at it from a parenting perspective. Okay. Um, if your kids are not behaving the way that you would like them to behave, one strategy is to bitch to your spouse about it and just complain about it. The better strategy is to sit them down and have conversations about what your expectation is for their behavior, explain why this is the expectation, and explain the consequence of what will happen when they don't meet the expectation. You guys have heard me use this analogy before, but let's look at the example of cleaning their bedroom. Go clean your room, right? Whenever I used to say, go clean your room, and they would go do it, and I would go check it, it was still a mess, right? That's a failure on my part, input, to be crystal clear with what I mean by a clean room. So you guys have heard this before, and many of you have made fun of me for it. But what I did was documented what a clean room looks like. So I had to spend the time, quote unquote, training. So I went into the bedroom, I cleaned it with my boys, folded clothes put away in drawers, the bed made, what the closets look like, what the floor looks like, all of those things. So we set up a scenario where this is a perfectly clean bedroom. What did I do after that? I photographed what a perfectly clean bedroom looks like. I opened up drawers and took pictures. I opened up the closet and took pictures. I blew up those pictures and I put them on the wall in their room. That is training. Just like if you have an assistant that's not setting up the room correctly, you have to train them up on what it means to set up the room correctly. Now, that may be via photographs, via video, via conversations, whatever it is. But in this situation with my boys, I had to train them on what a clean room looks like. So now that I've trained them up, when I go say, clean your room, they have absolute clarity with what I mean. I've also told them that when I say your room needs to be clean by 8 p.m., and if it's not clean by 8 p.m., then you lose screen time the following day. They understand that. That's the consequence associated with not doing what I've asked you to do. Now, that's a carrot and stick consequence. That works with kids. Okay. That works with people that you can't ultimately fire. We have talked about some of the consequences of not doing their things. But again, just for this particular example. So they have absolute clarity on what I'm asking them to do, and they have absolute clarity on the deadline, and they have absolute clarity on the consequence associated with them not doing what I've asked them to do by the deadline. It's very black and white, right? I've controlled the inputs. I've been clear on what I want from them. I've been clear on how to do it, and I've been clear on the consequence. You can do the same thing with your team. Be crystal clear on what you need them to do. Be crystal clear on if they're trained up to do it. Be crystal clear on the consequence. Now, again, originally the consequence is how their lack of doing something negatively affects either other team members, the practice, or the profitability of the business or a patient base, right? That's the first series of consequences. If after a few weeks they still don't get it, now we start to talk about carrot and stick consequences. You're going to lose bonus. You're going to be temporarily suspended. You're going to possibly lose your job. We don't lead with those consequences. We lead with the first set of consequences. But all of what I just unpacked are inputs. These are things in your control. if you do these things, if you execute on these inputs on a regular basis, you will get the output that you want. Just like when I am dedicated towards 2,200 calories per day, a workout every day, 15,000 steps per day, I will get the result I want. But Jason, those inputs are hard. Yeah, they're hard. So you have to decide if the output that you're striving for is really what you want. For me, I really wanted to be to 185 or 186 pounds so I can enter a powerlifting meet next week at 181 and not have to cut a ton of weight. That was really, really important to me. And that's what drove me every single day to stay at 2,200 calories, 15,000 steps, and a strength training workout every day. If you want your kids to clean their room, then you got to, no matter if you're tired and you're exhausted and oh my gosh, woe is me, you have to be fully dedicated towards the following inputs to get the output that you want. If you want a dental room that's set up properly every time you do root canal build-up crown by your assistant, then you got to put in the work. You have to do the inputs of making sure that person understands what they're responsible for, making sure that person is trained up so they have absolute clarity on what a well set up room looks like. And then ultimately either rewarding them through appreciation when they do it consistently or having consequence conversations if they're not doing it. Those are the inputs. When you consistently do that, you'll get the output that you're looking for. So hopefully this message resonates with you. You can only control what you can control. You have full control over the inputs. Some inputs are easy. Some inputs are hard. I can assure you that if the output is motivating enough for you, if the output is worth fighting for, if the output will bring you a tremendous amount of joy and fulfillment, then you will be motivated to put in work on the inputs. If the output doesn't move the needle for you, if you could really care less about the output, then you'll never be motivated when it gets hard to put in the work on the inputs. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this message resonated with you. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. I can be reached via email, cell phone. Contact information is on the website, dentallighthouse.com. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.